Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we'll be talking about EA Sports College Football 25 and how it pertains to our Tennessee Volunteers. Now, some of y'all are probably asking, why do we keep on talking about this video game? Some of y'all might not play video games. I'm not a huge video game player at this point in my life, but back in the day, this game was one that I played a lot, so I'm very excited for it to come back out. But the reason that we're talking about it is not for that. It's really just because of branding purposes. This is going to be so huge for our brand. I think that this game could end up being one of the top sellers as far as video games go of all time. And that's a whole lot of eyeballs to have on this game. And I've told the story several times about my nephew Bray, who's on this channel sometimes. He learned the game of football. He fell in love with the game of football, especially college football, from me playing this game with him and just kind of breaking down how to do different things. But it's all about that pageantry that this game can show that really gets you immersed into college football. And it's a completely different sport than Madden is. We've seen several people have come out and said, hey, we got to go down to Orlando and play this game. The first thing that everyone is saying is that this game ain't Madden. That's huge. I talked about this before. Do not want a Madden clone kind of like rebranded or, like repackaged to be college football. That's not what this is supposed to be. Doesn't sound like that's what this is. But just a simple fact that everyone's saying it makes me think that I don't know what to believe. It just kind of feels like maybe EA Sports made sure that, hey, if you're going to make a video on this game, make sure that you say this first. Either way, I think that everyone wants to buy this game. People are going to buy this game. They're going to be playing this game. Even if you don't know a whole lot about college football, you will learn about different programs from this game. And one of the biggest things is going to be the teams that people play with the most, especially whenever you're talking about online. You know, you're going to head to head up against people all across the world. What team's going to be used the most? Well, I think that Tennessee will definitely be in that top three. And I'm going to tell you a couple of the reasons why, just from watching, 5 to 6 different videos, reading a whole bunch of articles, just to research for this video that I'm bringing to y'all. And it sounds like everything really is going to look good for us. Again, that pageantry will be in this game. It sounds like everyone who is involved in making this game wants to make sure that we get that real college football feel. And Tennessee has great tradition. So it will be in this game. We will be running through the T. We actually heard that officially. That's huge because no one else has anything like that. That is different. It separates us from everyone else. So I love to hear that. Also, it sounds like the college stadiums will have their own home field advantage. Well, Neyland Stadium is officially the record breaker and record holder for decibels in a college football stadium with 137. So whenever that crowd gets rocking on this video game, it's going to be rocking a whole lot more inside of Neyland than anywhere else. At least that's what I am anticipating. If they're staying true to what I've been hearing, to what I've been reading, they want to make this as realistic as possible. Tennessee, Neyland Stadium, is the loudest stadium in the entire country in college football. So that's going to be huge. I think the teams will want to play with Tennessee just for that. But also, sounds like the playbooks will be as true to form as they can possibly be. Tennessee running this air raid where we spread the entire field out is going to make it very easy for teams that are using Tennessee to be able to dissect defenses and score points at a really, really quick rate. Now, I don't know if the option routes and all that's going to be in this one. I would expect that it probably will be some variant of that, but it's not going to be 100%. Tennessee's offense, we all know that Coach Heupel likes to keep it very close to the vest with that, but just having the simple principles of our offense, also being a hurry-up offense, where I would imagine that our players won't be getting as tired as the defense will get. Whole lot of reasons that I think that people will be picking Tennessee and playing with Tennessee. It might be kind of hard just to learn how to use this offense early on, but once people master it, this will be one that's very hard to stop, and that's important for games like this. Also, it sounds like quarterbacks will be very important. There's going to be like a power meter for the throwing, and that's huge. But you'll also kind of be able to fit the ball into some tighter windows. I'm talking about throwing the ball over linebackers' heads and fitting it into a tight window right in front of those safeties. That's huge, and I can just tell you this as a player of these types of games, that's what I want to be able to do. It's very realistic to how the game actually works, but Nico should be someone who can spin it. And, I think that with the way that we spread this field out, it should be very user-friendly for people who want to play with Tennessee. And then also, not just talking about the passing, but talk about the running game. They're saying that the blocking schemes will be true to form, very true to form. So if it's a zone blocking scheme, it's actually going to be played like a zone blocking scheme. If it's a man-on-man scheme, that's the way that it's going to be played. Tennessee scheme, again, going back to spreading that field out, seeing those ladder boxes, that's going to happen by default. Because if you don't have those ladder boxes on this video game, you're going to leave someone wide open on the outside. those are easy catches. You're going to be able to, move the football, keep those chains going, and score points on a very consistent clip. But just talking about running sounds like it's extremely realistic. I think that Tennessee's scheme as a whole is going to be so user-friendly. And that's what I'm really looking forward to this one. That's why I think that Tennessee will be a team that is used a whole lot in this game. And again, it matters because if you go back to this game back in 2013, 2014, we're talking about, schools like Oregon that had just started to get good, right? Like they got a whole lot of cachet from games like this because they had a whole lot of different jerseys. Like I think that they had the most jersey combinations in the entire video game. Tennessee's also going to have several different jersey combinations, but that just goes to show you, right? Because people still want to go out to Oregon. And a big part of the reason for that is because of this video game. So it's huge for us moving forward, not just for football, but for all sports at the University of Tennessee. And I think that's going to help us out tremendously. Now, something else that we heard from this, and P and I had talked about this, I want to say last weekend, just in, talking about this game, we said, hey, look, we think that the players' individual grades will probably come from Pro Football Focus. It just makes the most sense. Well, we got confirmation that that is what's going to happen. And that's huge for us because, well, thanks to y'all as people who are donating to this channel, members of this channel, subscribers of this channel, people who like all of that type of stuff. Y'all have helped us to be able to get a subscription to Pro Football Focus, and we're going to take a look at what the grades could possibly be for our Tennessee Volunteers today, and I hope that y'all will enjoy it. Let's go ahead and jump into it, but please, as always, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so we'll be starting off with the running back position and looking at the Pro Football Focus grades and just trying to correlate to what that could possibly be inside of this EA Sports College Football 2025 video game. And number one, okay, I just want to make sure that I get this out there for everyone. Whenever we're talking about Pro Football Focus, I like it because they're very consistent in their grading methods, right? I know that it takes a whole lot of time and effort. I think that they have over 600 analysts that work on this stuff with 133, 134 teams, whatever that number is. And, they come up with these numbers on a scale that's kind of weighted, I would say very similar to what the players on these teams in college will be getting on a week in and week out basis. But it might not necessarily be 100% indicative of what the grades will be on a video game. I do think that since Pro Football Focus has kind of come out with EA Sports and they've announced publicly that they are part of the grading scale, I don't think that the grades will dwindle up under what we see right here for players that we'll call it a threshold of 100 snaps have. So whenever you're looking at these players, okay, you might see some guys that barely have played that have higher grades than players that are starters or that have been starters. Don't really worry about that. It's more so about players that have 100 snaps or more. I would say that their grade that we're seeing here off of Pro Football Focus is probably going to be their floor for this video game. So let's keep that in mind moving forward. Okay, so now moving on to the running backs, we're going to try to, breeze through this because we don't want to take too much time bringing on every single player, but I will point out Dylan Sampson, okay? Dylan Sampson is at an 81.5 overall, and we're seeing that everything looks good with him outside of his pass blocking and his run blocking. Run blocking is not really going to matter in our system, but pass blocking for sure will. We talk about him so much. We say, hey, listen, if Dylan Sampson gets better at pass blocking, he's going to be absolutely tremendous. And just for a point of reference, look at Jalen right up here. He's got a 91 overall, and you see how consistent his numbers are all the way through. The difference between him and Dylan Sampson is definitely going to be that pass blocking grade. So keep that in mind moving forward. Now, Cam Selden, who didn't play a whole lot last season, he only had, 43 snaps, but he's at a 67.3. I would think that for players like this, right, and really, I'll just say this, for everyone that we're looking at right now, too, keep in mind, this is from the end of last season. What happened before with this video game is every single year players that have played before got, at least like a 4 to 5 point increase overall. So we can expect that for everyone that we are looking at. That's what I'm thinking, right? So I'm thinking that Dylan Sampson, again, just for a point of reference, might be somewhere around, anywhere from like an 81.5 to maybe like an 86 or so. That's what we can expect for him to be. Now, let's move on to the next position, and that's going to be center. This is a position that a lot of people have been speculating over, especially whenever it comes to this game, because of Cooper Mays. He's a veteran. We think that he's a really good player, especially inside of our scheme. But what is his grade going to be on this video game? Well, again, y'all, take all of these grades on Pro Football Focus with a grain of salt. Part of the reason for that I didn't, talk about in the last part of this video is because they don't know exactly what's going on inside of the playbooks, like what everyone's supposed to be doing. I think that they have a pretty good idea of whenever they win and lose on some occasions, but not on all occasions. But since they are going to be a very critical part of determining the grades in this game, we can expect that it's going to be very similar to what we're seeing off of their actual grades on Pro Football Focus. And something else that is that if a player didn't get any snaps in the previous seasons, they will not have a Pro Football Focus grade. So we won't see any freshmen on any of these lists. Just want to make sure that I throw that out there for everyone. Now, Cooper Mays is at a 61 overall. He's got 65.3 in pass blocking, 60.8 in run blocking. Now, I would have to anticipate that he's going to get a pretty significant boost. I don't see him being in the 60s. I would have to anticipate that he's probably going to be somewhere at least in the 75 range. The reason for that is he's a starter on this team, and a lot of folks have said several good things about him. So just keep in mind that these grades are probably going to be more of the floor for everyone that's got 100 snaps or more on these teams. And then, we can see the Vice and Lang with only 23 snaps last season is at a 54.8. I think that he's going to also take a pretty significant increase. He's probably going to be up over the 70s. You just don't see a whole lot of players in especially SEC football, but Power 5 football in general or Power 4 football now with grades under like a 70. 70 is usually about the floor. You might see a couple that are more like walk-on bodies that might be up under that. But I think that we can rest assured that everyone's going to be a 70 and over on this game. Cooper Mays really should be one of the better centers coming back in 2024. So I'm going to say anywhere from like a C- type of a grade. So we're talking about, maybe 74-ish to maybe like a B or, like a B-. We're talking about up to about 80. That's where he's going to start off at. And now for the tight ends, we have several players in this one. Again, just pay attention to what's highlighted in blue. Let's go all the way down to the bottom because we see that Miles Kitselman has an 89.1 overall. That's really good, but he only has 26 offensive snaps from Alabama last season. Let's move on up to Holden Staes coming from Notre Dame. 369 snaps, they have him at a 61.2 overall. I think that he's going to be higher than this, but I also think that Miles Kitselman will end up being a little bit lower than what his grade projects him at. They're going to have to come up with some sort of a solution based off of how many snaps players got in last season's game. And I don't think it's just going to be all Pro Football Focus. Again, I kind of feel like if it's 100 snaps or over, that's the floor, but EA Sports will kind of put their imprint on this thing as well. I think that we could expect for a guy like Holden Staes at a 61.2 right here to get up to, I would say somewhere around like a C+ to like a B. That's where I feel like he's going to end up at. And then let's look at Ethan Davis, who I think could end up starting this season, but we'll see what happens over the rest of the summer. He's at a 63.2, which I think is really good, okay? I think, with him only having 28 snaps, you may actually kind of boost players up in some situations if they have a lower snap count just based off of the way that they look out on the field. Like, are they really good athletes? Do you see them making good catches? I think that you have to take into account how big they are, how fast they are, which is something that Pro Football Focus does not do. They are literally just looking at how you are performing from their perspective on a play-in and play-out basis. I think that Ethan Davis will probably be a little bit up under Holden Staes in this game just because Holden Staes has played more. So I would say that if we have, we'll call it Holden Staes at about an 81, we would say that Ethan Davis would probably be somewhere around like a 78, and Miles Kitselman would probably be somewhere around like a 74 to a 75. But that's going to be really good on this video game for the tight end position. And next we have the defensive tackles. This is a position group that P and I have talked about a lot. I think that this is one of the deepest groups on this entire team. And we can see right here at the top, Elijah Simmons has the highest ranking overall per Football Focus with a 73.7 with over 100 snaps. So I think that he could end up being maybe the best D tackle on our team, in this video game. But we don't know how close he's going to be with guys like Omar Nomalad, who's a 71.6, and with Big O, who's only at a 64.7. I would have to anticipate that all these players will at least get a 5 to 6 point boost in their ratings on this video game. But again, I do think that Elijah Simmons could end up being the highest rated guy. Now, as you're just kind of going through everything else, Bryson Easton is another one that we know in real life is a dog. He might really be the best overall talent that we have at this position on this team. And I think that as the season progresses, he will end up being the highest rated defensive tackle probably by week 4 or 5. All the way down here, Jackson Moy, who is a transfer from Stanford. He's at a 60.3, but they also have him at a 75.6 in coverage. That's very interesting. I hope that we can use him that way, just kind of dropping it back in coverage sometimes versus different teams, especially like Georgia that loves to throw the football over the middle of the football field. I think that would be huge. We get the pressure from the outside, have him kind of drop back into coverage. That's going to be really interesting. I think that players will like to use him just as kind of like a coverage guy in this game. It's kind of a cheat code whenever you're playing video games like this. But that's about the way that I think things will look. Again, just keep in mind for all the freshmen, all the underclassmen, really everybody, just expect at least a 5-point increase or more in their grades heading into this season. Now on to the linebackers. We see the Keenan Pili up at the top with only 30 snaps, but he's at about an 80.8. I think that he's going to be somewhere in this ballpark. He may be a little bit higher. Again, this is the floor. It might add 5 points to his game. He is for sure the best linebacker that we have on this team. And as we're kind of going down, Ben Bolton's also really high with only 18 snaps, but Caleb Perry is another one with over 100 snaps, and he's at a 70.5. He's really high up on this deal. And his coverage grade is really important. Now, something that I like to do in this game is my linebackers need to be good in coverage. So he might be starting for me on this game, and I hate to give away all my secrets because I do want to play up against some of y'all in these games, at some point. But yes, Caleb Perry looks pretty good here. But Jeremiah Telander, I think, is pretty low. He does also have over 100 snaps, almost 200 snaps. He's going to, I would say, gain about 10 points from what we're seeing right here at a 66.5, maybe to the start of the season. It might not be a full 10, but he should be at least in the C range. Now, something that I found that's absolutely crazy is Arion Carter being at a 44.3. He will be the second best overall linebacker in real life, as far as I'm concerned. He should be a lot higher than that, but we'll see what happens. Will he stay around this sort of a range? Will he only gain 10 points? He might be able to get the biggest boost out of all of our players from Pro Football Focus to the actual game. I would say that you've got to put him at somewhere around like a C+ to like a B-. But this group right here, just as far as what I'm projecting, should be a really good one on this game. It may end up being one of the better ones, at least top 10, just starting off on this video game. So that's really big. Back to offense, we have the wide receivers, and there's no freshmen in this one. So Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley will not be included on this one. But just for another point of reference, let's say that, coming out of high school, at least how the old games used to work, was 4-star players were at about like a C- to, like a solid C. And then, 5-star players were about like a C+ to a solid B. In very rare occasions, there would be an A-. So a guy like Mike Matthews might have a grade of about a 78 to maybe like an 81, something like that. Someone like Braylon Staley would probably be around that same ballpark, maybe a little bit lower. I just want to throw that out there for everyone. Now, at the top, we have Brew McCoy, who's at a 69.7. That's way too low for him. He should most definitely be at a solid B to a B+. No questions asked. Part of the reason for that is his run blocking grade on Pro Football Focus is way too low. 53.3, that's laughable. He's one of the best run blocking wide receivers on the face of this planet. He should be, an A in this without a question. He's almost like a tight end playing wide receiver. So that's the first point of reference. And then we've got Squirrel White at a 68.9. What I like right here is that he's not too far behind Brew McCoy. So if we've got Brew McCoy on Pro Football Focus at a 69.7, which is, about a point higher than Squirrel White, if we're saying that, hey, he's going to end up being somewhere around, mid to high 80s, then would have to anticipate that Squirrel White should also be there. That's where he deserves to be. And as we're just kind of going through here, just pay attention mostly to the starters. Dante Thornton at a 66.5. I think he's going to be a little bit higher than that, but that's about where you could expect for him to be at just based off of his performance from last season. But we know with him in the offseason, seems like he's kind of coming along. So I would hope that he should at least be in that C range. And then Caleb Webb, he's looked really good in the offseason. He's at 61.4 overall. Think that he could at least be somewhere around Dante Thornton. And I can also kind of echo that same sentiment for Chaz Nimrod, who's at a 59.5. That's way too low for him. I think that he played very well last year. He was one of our more consistent wide receivers right outside of like Squirrel White after Brew went down. It was really Chaz Nimrod was probably the most consistent. So he should get a way bigger bump in his ratings at the start of this one. But at the same time, guys, let's not be too surprised if Pro Football Focus doesn't let EA Sports go too far with, going over the top or, adding points to what their grade is. That's why I said, just look at this as a floor. And then also down here, Nathan Leacock is very important to me. I think he's going to be very important to this program moving forward. He's going to have to play some this season. I hope early and often, right? As soon as he gets healthy, we need for him to be out there and getting some very productive reps. He's only at a 56.5, and I can understand that because I don't think he got to see the field at all last year. But this season, he will get to see the field. He's a very good athlete. Expect as time progresses for his grade to go up, but it might be somewhere, again, in like that 4-star range was what he was coming out of high school, in like that, C minus to maybe B minus type of a grade. But his will probably be on the lower end of that spectrum just because, again, he didn't really get to play last season. And then Chris Brazzell down here at the very bottom is actually our highest rated wide receiver coming into 2024 per Pro Football Focus at a 76.3. Expect for him to probably end up being the highest rated wide receiver on this team, period. Whatever Brew is at, if he's at, we'll call it like an 84, 85. Expect for Chris Brazzell to be like an 86 or an 87. That's what I am projecting. He should also be a player with a very wide catch radius, something that I have heard is going to be a part of this video game, so that's going to be huge. And next we have cornerbacks, and the highest rated cornerback that we have on this team per Pro Football Focus is Jalen McMurray with a 67.2. I don't think that he's going to be necessarily rated as high as a Jermod McCoy, who I feel like is the best cornerback on this team as time progresses. Now, is he that guy as everything kind of starts out? He could end up being that. That's very interesting. But yeah, for sure, Jermod McCoy, looking at his body of work, I have no idea why he's as low as he is on Pro Football Focus. Again, y'all, that's why you take this stuff with a grain of salt. And they've got his coverage at a 65.3. I mean, but you saw him covering up and locking down the best wide receivers in college football last year, at least some of the best anyway. Now, Jordan Thomas, who we know plays star for us, also has a really good grade. That's going to be huge for us because that nickel player in these games is so critical. That slot fade, I think, is going to be deadly in this game. But it looks like Jordan Thomas could be someone who could cover him up. And then, we've got Ricky Gibson, who's another very highly rated player. And I think that he's going to be great for us this season. Again, expect for him to get a really big boost moving forward throughout the rest of the season as they continue to upgrade these rosters. Now, I love to see this, right? Jordan Matthews is not very far behind Ricky Gibson. That adds a whole lot of depth to this team. Christian Harrison is also up there. So I think that we're going to have a really good cornerback group on this game. Again, I don't think that anyone on our roster, as far as starters go, will be up under a C minus. I just don't think that that's going to be possible. I think that everyone's going to come in at a solid C or better, and I would anticipate that if they do it right, okay, if EA Sports gets it right with Pro Football Focus, you've got to have Ricky Gibson and Jermod McCoy as B minus types of players. And next up, we have our safeties, and Pro Football Focus has Will Brooks as the highest rated returning safety on this team next season. I don't know how this is going to work with the grades on this college football video game. I don't think that he's the best player in real life as far as the safety goes, but he could end up being that once this whole thing starts off. Again, as the season progresses, he will not be rated higher than a guy like Kobe Thomas, who is at a 58.2. I believe that's third on this list as far as returning safeties, right there behind Andre Turntine, who's at a 59.8. Then we have John Slaughter, who's at a 57.1. And then we've got William Wright, who's at a 55.1. Now, I do think that a couple of true freshmen might be a little bit higher than a guy like William Wright. Just to start this game off, somebody like Boo Carter, I think he will be a little bit higher. Again, y'all, we are not anticipating that probably any of these players will be lower than like a C minus. So just keep that in mind. But I think that it's a good point of reference just to kind of see where Pro Football Focus kind of has them rated at. It gives us a good idea of who's going to be the best player once this game kind of starts off. Now let's switch back to the offensive line with the offensive tackles. And down here at the very, very bottom, we've got Lance Hurd, who has the highest rating out of all of the players that have over 100 snaps with a 71.4. I think that he will be the highest rated offensive lineman that we have this season, and that's what we're seeing right here. So 71.4 for him. Expected for him to be anywhere from like a solid B to like a B+. That would be fair for him. Now, moving on to the next highest rated players, we have Dane Davis and John Campbell tied. I would anticipate that because John Campbell is a starter, he will get a little bit of an increase in his ratings over Dane Davis, but they could also maybe stay even. I don't think that anyone, as far as the starter goes in this offensive line, is going to be up under, we'll call it like a C+, but as far as the tackles go, probably C+. So I would say that maybe Dane Davis will probably be in that C+ range. John Campbell would probably be a little bit over C+, maybe at about a B-. And then also looking at Sham Umarov, who didn't get 100 snaps, only 13, but he's actually at a 68.4 overall. I think that he could end up being, again, probably about like a C plus. But if you move him over to guard, which is where he's actually going to be playing at, again, giving away some secrets to y'all for this game, you move your tackles inside to guard, maybe even at center sometimes. They usually take a 4 to 5 point increase in their ratings. I think that Sham Umarov is going to have a grade that's pretty close to Javonte Spraggins in this one playing at left guard. But y'all can see the rest of our players playing here at tackle. Let's move on to the guards. And we can see up here at the very top that Javonte Spraggins has a grade of a 67.7 overall. I think it's going to be a whole lot higher than that. Probably somewhere in that B minus to like a solid B type of a grade. And then we've got Jackson Lampley is right behind him with the 66 overall. I would say maybe add about 10 points to his grade for sure. Andre Carrick at a 58.5, add 10 to him as well. Maybe even 15. I think he might be like a C minus or so. I mean, maybe even C plus, because I did say before that maybe none of our offensive linemen get up under that C plus range, but some of these guys might kind of be more at like a solid C, maybe like a C minus. And then Masai Reddick is at a 58.4 with only 9 snaps. Don't know what they're going to do with him, but he might kind of stay around this range, probably somewhere at about like a D plus-ish, 72, 73, I feel like would be fair for him. Now back to defense. Let's talk about our defensive ends. I know a whole lot of y'all been waiting on this one. James Pierce is at the very top of this list with a 90.9 overall at the end of last season. Now keep this in mind. I think that moving forward, he's going to get a much higher grade, but they may just kind of wait to see how he plays. I would say this, to start this game off, he probably will be the highest rated player in this entire video game. Look for him to be, 97 plus overall. Another reason I think a lot of people will want to play with our Tennessee Volunteers. Now, right up under him, we have Joshua Joseph, who's not that far behind him as far as Pro Football Focus goes, 79.2. So he's already at about an 80. I think that in this game, we can expect for him to be like a B plus to like an A minus. So what that means is in this video game, individual battles, it sounds like you can win them with better players with better talent. Tennessee will have some really good edge rushers. It's all about being able to protect your quarterback and to be able to get after that quarterback. So this is another part of the reason I feel like Tennessee will be a team that everyone wants to play with, because we've got 2 bookends that can go. Now, they do play the same position, but in this game, you can move Joshua Joseph to one side and then have James Pierce on the other. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun for me. Now, Tyree West, who is a true strong side defensive end, is at a 64.8. I would expect for him to be somewhere around a 75 in this video game. Dominic Bailey at a 60 overall. I think that he will probably be somewhere around a 73 to a 74. Jason Jenkins at a 56.9. He might be on the brink of just, trying to break a C minus. That's about where he should be. Caleb Herring. I think that usually too, like as I'm thinking about it, looking back on it, players that, go from a freshman to a sophomore tend to have the biggest increase every single year. So he could end up being one of our highest rated pass rushers in this game. But we don't know for sure, just kind of speculating. Again, this is all about the floor of these players at each position. And last but certainly not least, we got to talk about our quarterbacks, especially Nico Iamaleava on Pro Football Focus. He's at a 78 overall, and that is off of 120 snaps. So I would say that this is going to be his floor. He should be more than likely in 80. I'm going to say a B minus to a solid B whenever this thing starts out. Now, we will see how much do they take into account the way that other coaches from different programs are talking about our players or different players in general. Does that kind of factor into what their grades are? It could. And if it does, Nico could very well be like an 85 to, maybe like an A minus on this video game just starting out. But I do think that for sure, as the season progresses, he will end up being the highest rated player in this game. And I think that James Pierce is going to have a really good year as well. So we'll probably have the top 2 players in the entire country. Now let's talk about, some of his different grades, right? So his passing grade is at a 73.6 based off of 120 snaps. I think that he's much better than that. I think that we all feel like he's much better than that. So just expect for that to be somewhere around, I would say for sure that should be like an 85 plus with no questions. And I'm just being fair whenever I say that. Now his running grade only at a 70.5. It might kind of stay around this, this ballpark, but I think that he's a lot better than that too. He can run, he can scoot. He might not look like he's moving fast because he's 6'6". He takes those long strides, but he is covering a whole lot of ground and he falls forward. I want to say every time that I've ever seen him run that football, he's strong, he's heavy, and he knows how to play football. He's a football player. So I would say that that should at least be at a C starting off. But again, man, as the season progresses, that should be in the high B ranges, especially as we get further into the year. Now let's talk about some of the other players, right? Navy Schuler is actually ranked a little bit higher than Gaston Moore, but he didn't have as many snaps. So he's at a 68.6, 60.4 as a passer, 64 as a runner. I think that you could bump him up more than that as a runner, especially, but expect for him to be somewhere around, I would say, like a 70 to about like 74, something like that for Navy Schuler. Now, Gaston Moore, way too low here. I think that he's a much better passer than what they give him credit for. Only a 59.5. He's got to be somewhere in the, C to a C plus range, if not a B minus as a passer. I think that he can also scoot, but he probably won't get a huge bump in his run ratings because he doesn't run a whole lot, but he can move. I would call it, 70 to like a 74 for his running skills. So that should be good for us being able to operate in this football game. Now, we all know that there's going to be a lot more ratings in this video game than what we're seeing on Pro Football Focus, which is a big part of the reason that this is all just pure speculation. And it's more of a ground, I feel like, for players that have over 100 snaps. But, with the quarterbacks, I mean, there's several things that you can kind of take into account. And you could, again, say the same thing for every single position. And I think that we have players that will fit into that mold very well. I mean, it's going to be fun to see what happens. And maybe some information will come out after I make this video today or tomorrow that will release a little bit more of the ratings. I know that they will kind of start to, release some of those, and they usually start off with the highest rated player. So we should know who the highest rated player is within about a month or so. Hope that y'all did enjoy this video, though, just a little bit of a different look at our team, as it pertains to this video game. And also, Pro Football Focus is a whole lot of fun to look at. And we will have some more videos just covering that with our individual players. Not covering this video game, but just talking about what Pro Football Focus sees in our players. And we hope that y'all will tune in for that. But as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.